All right, welcome back. Powers on Sports podcast. Hopefully, you enjoyed my intro. Gave you a few notes and nuggets about some thoughts around the sports world. And now we are going to dive into a couple of topics close to this man's heart. A little NFL schedule. We're going to talk a little baseball scandal brewing. We're going to talk a little NBA playoffs. No better person, my man TJ Rives, passport hunter himself here in the state of Florida. Welcome in, TJ.
Never did I realize that I was going to have to spend months of my life trying to figure out how to get passports for my wife, me, and then my underage children, which it's a bigger nightmare, by the way, to get it for your underage children because both parents have to be present, and you've got to have an official government person through the post office that's got to have both of you standing there, notarize that both of you are there. Is this your child? Sign right here. Here's the picture. This is them. Here's their official birth certificate. Somehow, I feel like it might be easier to defect to like a communist country than it is to get a passport for this country. Did I say that out loud on the Powers on Sports podcast? I think I did. But we're all good. We're all good with that, and it's good to be with you, my friend.
Mr. Rives is the host of the Three Dog Thursday podcast, which will be coming back in the late August part of the calendar for college football and the NFL. He does a boxing podcast every week. And all right, first boxing question we get off. Give me a couple big fights that are coming up this summer that the audience is going to be interested in. I know Canelo Alvarez just fought a week or so
Canelo,
back.
Good call. Canelo just fought. He's one of the biggest names in boxing out of Mexico. They just had the Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia lightweight showdown. That's the non-heavyweights. Maybe we'll get a heavyweight title fight later this year. There's an interesting one that will be on ESPN pay-per-view this weekend. Lightweight world title fight. Devin Haney, Californian, United States, and a guy that's out of the Ukraine, Vasily Lomachenko. Lomachenko is a former 2-division world champion, obviously war-torn Ukraine. He's trying to recapture the lightweight titles. So again, that's a pay-per-view. That's not just on ESPN or ESPN Plus. You got to pay an extra, like literally $74.99 or something like that. I think it may be a little overpriced. But yeah, the boxing is good. I love picking the underdogs in the college football season. We love the Buccaneers and the Buccaneer Radio Network coverage and everything that happens with that. But right now it's a little bit of off season. So I'm good to break down whatever you need on Powers on Sports, my friend.
All right, let's get into the NFL schedule first. I don't want to talk about the Bucs a whole lot. I just want to talk about some general NFL scheduling things. Your thoughts on a game on Black Friday. Are you a fan of that, or should they leave that to the college world? High school games are on that Friday night as well. What are your thoughts on the NFL diving into the world of Black Friday?
In Florida is generally in the playoffs on Black Friday. Am I right? Big time, well into the playoffs. New Year's Day, Thanksgiving Day, they've always owned. And now Black Friday, why not? I mean, it used to belong to college football, but it's going to be Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, if Rodgers is still upright, playing against the Miami Dolphins in that matchup. Look, I will be the first one to tell you I draw a check from an NFL team. They are going to play games whenever they want, at whatever time they want, on whatever continent they want. It's just it is that big of a deal. And I know we're probably going to get to this about the playoff game being on streaming.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're able to get $100+ million bid on a single playoff game, a single game is worth $100 million in the postseason. It tells you how popular and prominent this league is. And they'll play games. If they want to play games at 2 a.m. from Guam, they're going to play them, Jason.
This is the same NFL that just got rid of a bunch of NFL media personnel from their NFL television entity, and you're cutting jobs left and right. But you're now cashing a check for $100 million
for a playoff game,
for one playoff
single game, not the whole package of the playoffs.
Crazy.
Televise all of it. It is crazy what it's become. As we often like to say, whether you're selling a home, whether you're selling something on is Craigslist still a thing?
Yeah,
eBay. It's not what you want to sell it for. It's what someone will buy it for. What someone's willing. You know that in the home lending business, don't you, Jason Powers? It's what somebody will pay. And if they want to pay $100 million for a single playoff game, let them.
All right, couple things. Obviously the European schedules, all that. The one thing I didn't like To me, one of the biggest storylines in this year is Tyreek Hill going back to play Kansas City. How do they put that game in Germany and not let Kansas City host that game? I mean, to me, that is one of the marquee revenge situations, and you put that game in Germany. Bad job by the NFL, in my opinion.
And did they want that as a storyline for one of these European games? I don't know that it mattered, or if just for whatever network is going to show it, whether that's going to be CBS or the NFL Network in the morning or whatever it is. I agree with you, but these things, look, this has become commonplace now, where they move these games and you play them over in Europe, and it's kind of strange. I mean, I still remember the Buccaneers' first trip to England was to play Tom Brady and the Patriots. And that's when the Patriots were in their heyday of having won Super Bowls. And the belief was you may never see Tom Brady at Raymond James Stadium because they don't play again for 8 more years.
Right.
Well, it turns out Brady did play at Raymond James Stadium on a Thursday night, as I believe, with the Patriots, and they won. And then lo and behold, he becomes the Buccaneer quarterback and they win a Super Bowl. I get it. But I remember the talk being back 13, 14 years ago that why are you playing that game in London when Tom Brady may never play again at Raymond James Stadium as a visiting quarterback for the New England Patriots? So I get it. I get it. And
you've been fortunate enough. You've got to experience all these Europe. You've been to Germany and to England. Which of the two countries was kind of a better atmosphere for football?
I think they're both good, but the German atmosphere was just bonkers. They seem to have more Americans and more American football fans, because the interesting thing is these two Germany games are going to be in Frankfurt. And we'll give a shout out to my guy, Doug Graber, the former Buccaneer defensive coordinator, the former Rutgers head coach, longtime coach in the NFL. He was the Frankfurt Galaxy coach when they won the World League in the early 2000s. And the Frankfurt franchise had over 40,000 season ticket holders. So they love American football, with a lot of Americans, a lot of displaced Americans, a lot of military base Americans all over Germany and in Frankfurt. So there is a big fan base, and two of the games, the two Germany games, are in Frankfurt this go around, not in Munich, where they had been before, or Berlin, the capital, or any other city in Germany. So, but that was rabid last year in Munich, because it's a first time. It's a first time for they and the Seattle Seahawks to be able to go there and say we were the first two teams that played there. Dave Moore told this story while we were over in Germany. He was a preseason player for the Miami Dolphins training camp. He began his career in 1992 with Dan Marino and the Dolphins, Don Shula as the coach. They played a preseason game in Berlin, in the old Berlin soccer stadium. And he said it was run down. There literally were about 15,000 people there.
Jeez.
This is 1992. He stepped out with me at Bayern Munich Stadium, and we were looking around about 30 minutes before the game, and he goes, my God, this is not Berlin 1992. The NFL does this right, and they will do it right in Frankfurt, and they will do it right in all the other countries where they're going to play.
What'd you think of Detroit getting the opening night nod, going to Kansas City? I think it's kind of cool that you give a up-and-coming team that opportunity for a little prime time. You know, it's easy to say, oh, let's have Philly and KC play. You're going to get a off-the-chart rating no matter who you put in that game. Sure. But I think it's good that you give Detroit a little love.
Yeah, and the Lions were obviously good at the end of the year and knocked the Packers out of the playoffs. You would have
played hard. The thing is, they could have easily packed it in. I think that was one of the things they rewarded them for, is they really made that last Sunday night game memorable on NBC by playing hard. They could have packed it in.
Rodgers' last game as a Green Bay Packer is a loss to the Lions to knock the Packers out of the playoffs. Yeah. How about that? But again, they gave it to Detroit. They could have given it to Buffalo, but Buffalo had played the road game, the road villain for the Rams last year on the Thursday night opener. They would have had to have done that again.
Right.
Maybe it's Tyreek Hill in Miami again that would have been the Thursday night game. But you're right. They give it to the Lions instead on the schedule.
Your Buccaneers, our Buccaneers. You got two primetime games. Monday night at home against Philly, a little surprising, early in the year, week 3, and then they go to Buffalo on a Thursday night, which I think will be cool for you because it's a night game in Buffalo in a very chaotic atmosphere up in Buffalo. Your thoughts on just the two primetime games for the Buccaneers?
And I'm not just saying this, I'm full of it on a lot of fronts, but I was saying all along, I thought the Eagles game could be a Sunday night or Monday night game just because it's the Eagles and the Buccaneers. And you got a lot of previous storylines,
Yep.
Including the Buccaneers closing down Veteran Stadium before they won their first
Yep.
Super Bowl, as you know, including Tom Brady and the Buccaneers beating the Eagles in the playoffs a couple of years ago, beating them also on a Thursday night in that regular season a couple of years ago.
Right.
So, I mean, there's history. There's history going all the way back, as we love, to Leroy Selman sacking Ron Jaworski in the Buccaneers' first ever playoff game, 1979. Is Buccaneer orange with Doug Williams and the late Ricky Bell and the late Leroy Selman against Ron Jaworski and the Eagles, going way back now. So there's history there. So I believe that was going to be there. And the Thursday night in Buffalo is going to be cool. They're one of the best teams in football. The Bucs have only played 2 times ever in Buffalo. I've been a part of both of them. 2009, a loss earlier in the year with Raheem Morris and Byron Leftwich was the quarterback. And then 2017, Jameis Winston and company had the lead. Jameis threw a long touchdown right in front of me to O.J. Howard. I still remember that. But the Bills came back, and that was Josh Allen, I believe, 2017. I think I have that right.
It might have been year one. It might have been year one.
It might have been year one for him, but they won the game. I remember Scotty Miller had a fumble late in the game. They stripped him of the ball, and Buffalo got the winning field goal.
Yep.
So not a lot of good memories for the Buccaneers. But that's the only 2 times the Bucs had not ever played in Buffalo going into the 2009 season. And now you get a Thursday night game. So that'll be interesting. And there's a possibility that a game could maybe get flexed late in the year. But you look at the Bucs schedule, Jason, late in the year, and it's Carolina twice. It's Atlanta once late in the year. Yep. I want to say there's another bad team, Jacksonville, late in the year. I don't know that gets flexed to Sunday Night Football. I don't know what would get flexed in December, let's say, if the Bucs were really good and in the hunt. I don't know what's there to get another national TV primetime game.
And a new thing this year is all Monday night games can be flexed too, so they have some flexibility
late in the year, like the
later in the year. Correct.
Like the last 4 weeks, they can move a Monday night game to Sunday, which I don't know how you feel about that. I won't taint you with my opinion first. Give me your opinion on what you think of that.
I think if you're going to allow NBC to do it on a Sunday, you should have a little leeway for ESPN to do it, because ESPN's paying a ton of money too.
Yes.
And you don't want them to get stuck with, we think teams are going to be good in May, but invariably a couple of those teams are not good. And if they're in a late week 14 Monday night game and it's a dud because the team's not any good, I think you should give ESPN that's a little bit of luxury on that as well.
But the only counterpoint to that is at least on Sunday night for fans out of market,
I agree,
that have flown in, that are staying in a hotel, Sunday 1:00 versus Sunday 8:00 is not as bad. Now, maybe you were going to have a nighttime flight to get out if it was Sunday 1:00 to move it around. But man, you're going to displace and anger and tick off thousands that are going to be saying, we come in for an out-of-market game as a fan. I mean, the Buccaneers, believe it or not, the Buccaneers have thousands of season ticket holders, not 27, not 50,000, but they have thousands of season ticket holders that don't live in the area.
Right.
That they either drive in from other parts of the state, and a lot of them fly in from other parts for big games and still have their Buccaneers season tickets. And on other fan bases, it is well known that they travel. Steeler fan, big time. Packer fan, Favre, then Rodgers. I don't know if this is going to be the case years from now, but the Favre and Rodgers Packers, the fans would travel by the thousands to road cities.
Yep.
And now you're going to tell them the game is not Monday night. You got to switch your flight to get there for Sunday. You got to switch your hotel room. Good luck. Pay the cancellation fees.
Right.
I can see where it's going to anger some people.
You're right. It'll be interesting to see if they extend the window that they have to announce that, maybe instead of a week and a half to maybe 2.5 weeks.
They're saying 12 days right now.
Wow.
That on 12 days notice, just like Sunday Night Football, that they can switch the game out and make it a Sunday game instead of a Monday night.
Last scheduling thing on the NFL, we'll move on. You've got with the Buccaneers, you got an entry schedule. Keep the luggage on the front porch. 6 out of 8 weeks in the middle of the year, you're on the road.
Yes.
6 out of 8, and then you're going to Green Bay in December. Get the parka ready.
I have got to get some extra layers. I have not been to. I have been to Lambeau in December. We played them there. in 2017 with Jameis Winston. I believe it was 2017, might have been 2018 in the first week in December. And we got a break because it was only 40 degrees at kickoff.
Right.
It was not like 14 degrees at kickoff. So we'll see if this one's going to be nastier. It's a couple of weeks later. We could have had Buffalo as well in December as a road game, but instead that was October. So you're right. Bucs get a lot of games at home early, 4 of the first 6 at home, then get some games on the road in the middle. And we'll see what it looks like as everything unfolds this fall.
All right, let's transition to the NBA. Draft lottery was held on Tuesday night. We are taping this just after the lottery was concluded. Mr. Wembayana is heading to the Alamo. The San Antonio Spurs win the lottery over the Charlotte Hornets. Third mega player that's been going to number 1 in the lottery due to the lottery. David Robinson in 87, Tim Duncan in 97, and now Wembayana in 2023. Just your thoughts on the lottery. Is there a conspiracy? There's always been thought of a conspiracy. Patrick Ewing to the Knicks,
right?
LeBron to the Cavaliers. He's from Akron. Now Wembayana, Tim Duncan, and David Robinson to the Spurs.
So I do believe in the conspiracies from the 80s because the first ever draft lottery, the Knicks got Patrick Ewing, and I think Golden State, and it was only like 7 teams in the lottery. It was a 1 in 7 chance for everybody, and Golden State got like the 7th pick, if I remember correctly, or something like that.
They were bad then.
Oh, they were horrible then. All right, so I am a fan, though, of the lottery because the Detroit Pistons were tanking like Shamu.
Yes.
And they end up number 5. Because of the ping pong balls. So it just goes to show you the NBA got it right 40 years ago on you want to stop teams from losing on purpose as the fail-safe way to get the number 1 overall pick or one of the first 2 picks. Have a lottery system where it boots somebody out and boots them out. I don't think they can be any worse than 5th. If you're in the top 3, you can't be worse than 5th is the way that they regulate it. So, but look, I'm for the lottery, and San Antonio comes up with a player that may be a bona fide generational player, and then again, maybe not. There's not a guarantee here. I mean, we have seen players. You want some recent names? Ben Simmons, Anthony Bennett. The Cleveland Cavaliers took UNLV's Anthony Bennett in front of every other player they could have taken. Number 1 overall. I go back to the candy man, Michael Olowokandi of the Clippers. I'm speaking your language.
Kwame Brown.
Kwame Brown. There have been some bad number 1 picks. So I don't know that Victor Wembayana is going to be phenomenal or not. Maybe he's pretty good in the NBA. We don't know. LeBron James turned out to be amazing coming in as an 18-year-old, but we don't know that this 18-year-old is going to be amazing. Stay tuned. But I am just in general, as you're asking me this, I'm in favor of the lottery system that the NBA came up with. And yes, go back on YouTube and watch the famous 86 draft lottery like the next year, where the Celtics had somebody's pick, and it was long believed that what they had done, because those were the days where they had the big circular drum, the plastic drum, and they were twisting it around with a crank, and they had the logos inside of sealed big envelope, big logos. And the word was, do you know this conspiracy theory? That they had put the Boston Celtics one in a freezer. And it made it freezing cold. Where when David Stern reached his hand in, he knew he was touching the cold one or not to pull the Celtics out last. And there is a suspicious moment, audience. Go back and look on YouTube. It's there, 86 draft lottery, where he reaches in to pull one out, and it suddenly like bangs the side of the plastic drum, and he drops it, and he picks another one up. And you can see it on the screen. And the belief has always been that that was the Celtic envelope freezing cold, and he found a way to kind of drop it and pick another one up. I'm just saying.
That's I have heard that. I have heard that conspiracy theory, and it would not shock me back in the day that
well, and of course the Celtics end up getting Len Bias with the number 1 overall pick, and horrifically he's dead a couple of days later of a drug overdose. 1986 in that draft, right after they picked him, because there was belief the Celtics had won the title in 1986. And now they're going to get Len Bias to add him to Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and Dennis Johnson and Robert Parrish and Danny Ainge. dear God. And Len Bias horrifically, tragically is dead 2 days later. But the lottery conspiracy is still there, my friend.
Well, speaking of bad news, give me your thoughts on the knucklehead that is Ja Morant.
Listen, we could go for 15 minutes on this. The simplest thing is the guy doesn't get it. And I was on a Memphis radio interview earlier on Tuesday as we're taping this podcast earlier in the week in my hometown where I went to college at the former Memphis State. And I know that town has got people apologizing for him. How stupid do you have to be at this point that he's likely looking at 25 games, maybe even like half the season, like 41 games?
Minimum 40.
Okay, because he's a repeat offender. They've warned him. He sat and he met with the commissioner, Adam Silver, supposedly went through some kind of sensitivity intervention training on stop doing this with flashing a gun on social media and all this stuff about guns. And the one thing I keep bringing it back to just real quick is Aqib Talib and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Talib just gradually continued knucklehead behavior and then stuff with guns and his brother with guns and Talib and his brother both. And there's a gun present. And now the brother is charged with killing a Dallas youth football coach last August. Jason, I know you work in high school football and have refed. You know, this is horrific stuff that Talib and his brother Talib, by witnesses, started the fight in this youth football game with an opposing coach, and his brother pulled a gun on camera and killed the opposing coach. So I'm not being over dramatic on the Powers on Sports podcast. This is what it can lead to. This is what it can lead to when you roll up on somebody else that's got a gun that knows you have a gun, Ja Morant, and there's an argument or a dispute, and it's now somebody else with a gun. So this is serious stuff, and you should not, I'm not saying you are, you should not be minimizing this if you're a fan of the Memphis Grizzlies or anybody else. This guy's making bad choices with who he's around and what he's doing, and it's not just that it could cost him tens of millions of dollars as an NBA player, but I'm not being overly dramatic here, that it could cost him much more with making the wrong choice of who you're around with and what you're doing. There you go.
Yeah, there's no, and Dad, who's not had the best image on some of these game incidents, he's involved in a little bit of this, and you got to blame him as well.
Let me give you an example. This is well known in the Memphis media. I don't know how much it got played up nationally. There was an incident earlier in this basketball season where his mother is at a mall in Memphis, and she felt like she was being discriminated against. She felt threatened or wherever she was in a department store in the mall. So she calls him. She calls Ja to come to the mall. Ja is there with his guys, and there is a dispute and a fight at the store. And allegedly, Ja Morant was armed. And again, what happens when there's a Memphis police officer or somebody in the fight that is also carrying a gun when these things are going on? We're not overstating the importance of this and the significance.
Somebody who's not worth $300 million that doesn't care,
right? And is going to pull a gun on you. So this is a very real thing that and maybe he's going to be sat down for a while. He is a fantastic player. He better is the franchise player for that Memphis team, and he's got to wake up because he's on the verge of ruining his NBA career right now.
And his his ability endorsement wise is probably next to nothing now. And if you're right, to me, if Silver doesn't lay down the hammer here, it's a massive failure by Adam Silver. All right. One more NBA. Your thoughts, NBA, as we're recording this, it's just the beginning of the Lakers and Denver series. You got Boston and Miami starting on Wednesday night. Just a quick thought, who you like in each series?
How do you go against the Lakers right now overall? I know Denver's got home court advantage, but LeBron's got championship pedigree. They are playing with house money. They made some moves at the trade deadline. The Lakers knock out the Golden State Warriors. How do you not favor them overall in that series? And the NBA is not going to admit this, but as long as they get the Lakers in the finals, they're fine with either Miami or Boston. They'd love to have Boston. And the whole you and I are contemporaries. The 80s and the Lakers in Boston, and even in the 2010s, Lakers and Boston battled in 2008, battled in 2010. They have all that history, all those storylines. Celtics in the finals last year. You would love to have the Celtics and the Lakers. You'd love it if it's just the Lakers and either the Celtics or the Heat. They don't want Denver and Miami. There's not going to be a PA announcement. There's not going to be a press release. But you talk about a come down. I don't care how good a player Jokic is. It's not LA. It's not Boston. It's not the history and the tradition. It will not be the same. But let's see. Maybe Denver earns it, and maybe Denver gets there in the championship series. It is interesting that the Lakers won the bubble championship, beating Denver and then beating Miami.
Same four teams.
Miami beat Boston. That's right. And the Lakers beat Miami in the bubble in Orlando. So is history going to repeat here for the matchup? We'll see.
Who got the rawest deal in getting fired? Doc Rivers, Budenholzer, Monty Williams.
Well, you're hired to be fired, and Budenholzer won a championship 2 years ago.
Yes. And Monty Williams was in the final that he got beat by Budenholzer in the championship
2 years ago. And by the way, didn't Nick Nurse, I'm going back now.
He left. He kind of quit, quote unquote.
They won the title within the last 5 years.
Yes.
You're hired to be fired in the NBA. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Doc Rivers has been passed around right now as a coach like the offering plate at church. Am I right? I mean, how many more? Doc's got to go back to the broadcast booth, I think. How many more situations between Celtics, Clippers? Wasn't he with the Magic's head coach, too?
He's lost 11 straight lose or go home games, whether it's game 6 or 7.
Right.
Elimination games, 11 in a row.
That's not good on the resume. Philadelphia needs somebody else, needs a different voice there. And
if Philadelphia pays James Harden a penny more than zero, they are insane. That guy is the worst big game playoff player, game 6, game 7 kind of guy arguably in the history of the league. For a guy
and the next guy he guards, especially in the postseason, will be the first guy he attempts to guard in the postseason. He plays no defense whatsoever.
Yes.
So you got to play some, and especially with everything on the line, you got to play well in the postseason, in the second season. I'm not
basketball, an off the court matter. I want to get your thought on. We had 2 in the last couple of weeks. Bob Huggins with an unfortunate, inappropriate comment on a podcast. And Bob Huggins, how dumb do you have to be to not realize what you're saying when you're saying it on a podcast? And then you had Glenn Kuiper, the Oakland A's broadcaster, that had an incident on the air. Just your thought. Huggins keeps his job, but gets docked $1 million on his salary, suspended a couple of games and such, where Glenn Kuiper, broadcaster, has been suspended indefinitely. No final resolution yet, but not on the air any longer. Just your thoughts on the not very equitable punishments for the
let's just put it on the line. Bob Huggins is arguably the most powerful figure, even over the governor in the state of West Virginia. Let's be honest about that. So that's how he has survived this. And again, he is suspended at the beginning of the year. He's got to go through sensitivity training. You're just saying idiotic things. And then with Glenn Kuiper, whose brother is also a prominent, they're both former players, but Dwayne Kuiper's a prominent broadcaster also. He's using the N-word at the beginning of a broadcast. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that he survives it. Tom Brenneman got fired, broadcaster, Cincinnati Reds, for what he said, and can't get back in. 3 years later. So I don't know that Kuiper survives this with the Oakland A's. The one thing from a broadcasting standpoint, and we're sitting right here, that you've got to treat every microphone as your career is on the line here. If there's a microphone around, absolutely do not. And I give advice to broadcasters, young broadcasters all the time. Do not take for granted that whatever you're about to say could ruin you. Just like you're trying to move up in the world, it could ruin you with whatever you're about to say. And it's different in Kuiper's case because he's on a broadcast in front of TV with a microphone. In Huggins' case, my understanding, he was on the phone. You're sitting at wherever he's sitting, at home, in the basketball office. And you think you're being funny with a comment about Xavier's pedigree of people and athletes, and you're not being funny. And he's fortunate that he's as powerful, influential, and successful as a basketball coach as he is, because if he was like Bob Williams,
If he was at Marshall, he'd have lost his job, not West Virginia.
Yeah, and especially if he's not a Hall of Fame caliber coach, you're going to be in big trouble.
Right. And you make a great point about live TV, that there's greatness of being about on live TV, but you can't take the words back once you say it on live TV and live radio and all that kind of,
And in Brenneman's case, Brenneman, again, was doing a 2020 broadcast in the COVID crazy year where he's in a studio while the game is being played elsewhere.
Right.
And he doesn't realize, because they don't tell him, you're not in the commercial break still. He still believes he's in the commercial break.
Right.
And they had come back and he's making an offhanded comment, not even realizing, again, in the crazy circumstance. And I hope he's a fantastic guy. I hope he gets another opportunity. We've given other opportunities to others. For example, Michael Vick, and Brenneman's used this example. Michael Vick went to federal prison for dogfighting charges, and Fox continues to employ Michael Vick.
Yes.
Fox, who Tom Brenneman worked for 2+ decades, doing the NFL, doing major college football, baseball for Fox. And so we come back to just one thing, and I know you're going to go here in a second, of is it worse what you said versus what you did? And in Michael Vick's case, heinous behavior involving animals, whatever you want to believe, that he did, not said, that he did over and over again, and went to prison for it.
Right.
And is still on the Fox coverage of the NFL, just for what it's worth.
A good point. You make a great point. And I'm sure guys that have gotten in trouble for saying stuff that they shouldn't have said. And,
oh yeah,
I mean, for different things, and it's just
real quick. There's an interesting case going on in Northern California involving the Sacramento sportscaster and former voice of the Kings and former radio host in Sacramento. Grant Napier's his name. And all he did was respond to a tweet from a former player, DeMarcus Cousins, who was putting Black Lives Matter on social media, and directed something at Grant Napier, and Napier answered back, all lives matter.
Right.
And the all lives matter in response gets Grant Napier fired from his jobs, plural. He lost them all. And he is alleging that because the radio company is of a different religion than he is, he believes that this is also religious discrimination against him. That's an interesting argument, that one of the reasons they canned him off the Sacramento radio job and his radio show is religious discrimination for saying on social media, all lives matter, in a tweet. Right. He lost his jobs for it. So you do have to be careful. So we'll see how that case, maybe he has no case. But it's in Northern California civil court right now that he is suing for damages because he lost his career 3 years ago for All Lives Matter, the tweet.
And he was a mainstay in that market for 25 years.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's not like he was a Johnny come lately kind of guy. No. He was a mainstay. All right, TJ Rives, great work, man. I really appreciate the time. Give the audience a quick update where they can find all your good stuff coming up in the next month or so. And
you're gracious to have me on Powers on Sports. I talk a lot of boxing. Big Fight Weekend website, bigfightweekend.com, Big Fight Weekend podcast. We're kind of in the lull right now before Buccaneers season will be here. And I'm part of the radio coverage with the Hall of Famer Gene Deckerhoff and Dave Moore on Buccaneers Radio. Three Dog Thursday podcast will be back. Talking underdogs, making underdog predictions, college football and the NFL. You've participated there as well. That and a lot of other hats later on. But for right now,
sports media. Tell about the sports media podcast.
The last word on sports media podcast. Another hat that I wear. We love talking sports media. Search podcast Last Word on Sports Media through lastwordonsports.com. We talk sports media there too, if you care. I get some great guests. Different takes on the sports media. Check us out. Last Word on Sports Media. Thank you for all the plugs. I'm going to take some time off. We may take advantage of those passports that we talked about at the beginning of the show. If we ever get them, we'll go out of the country and go do something if they get mailed to us. Be well, Brother Powers. Thank you for having me.
Tell the missus Happy Mother's Day. Good luck with the insurance shopping for the twins about to turn 15.
As drivers,
the car insurance.
Car insurance. I'm going to be doing radio till I'm 80. I'm convinced of that.
Have a great week, sir. We will talk soon.
Yes, sir, Brother Powers.
Appreciate you finding us on the Powers on Sports podcast. Remember, at JPO Sports on Twitter. Love to hear your comments, and we will see you next week on the Powers on Sports podcast.